Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into something that's, honestly, a bit of a superpower, the ability to take charge of the story we tell ourselves. We're going to get into the science of CBT journaling and how you, yes you, can become the editor of your own mind.
So let's just jump right in with a really important question. You know that voice in your head? The one that's got a running commentary on pretty much everything you do? Ask yourself, is that narrator always reliable? Is it always telling you the absolute truth? Or, does it sometimes blow things out of proportion, jump to the worst conclusion, or just fixate on the negative?
Well, here's the fantastic news, and it's really the core of what we're talking about today. You are not stuck with that narrator. Using the principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, you actually have the power to actively, scientifically change your own thought patterns. You can literally rewire your brain.
So how do we do it? Here's our roadmap. First, we're going to look at the surprising science behind why just writing things down actually works. Then we'll put on our detective hats and identify the common mental glitches that trip all of us up. After that, I'm going to introduce you to the main event, the thought record, and give you the exact questions to challenge your own thinking. And finally, the most important part, we'll talk about how to turn all this great knowledge into real, lasting action.
Okay, first up, the power of writing. Now, this isn't about keeping a diary like, "Dear diary, today I went to the store." No, we're talking about using writing as a very specific, science-backed tool for getting clarity and managing stress.
So what is actually going on inside your brain when you do this? It's pretty cool. When you engage in what's called expressive writing, you're not just doodling, you're lighting up your prefrontal cortex. You can think of this as your brain's CEO, or its command center. It's the part that helps you regulate your emotions and solve problems, basically taking all those chaotic thoughts and making them feel orderly and manageable.
All right, so writing gets our brain's problem solver online. But what's the problem we're trying to solve? Well, let's get into the specific glitches in our thinking that we're targeting. We all have these automatic, kind of unhelpful thoughts that just pop up and create a ton of unnecessary stress. Now, the official term for these glitches is cognitive distortions, but honestly, a much easier way to think about them is just as bad thinking habits. They're these well-worn patterns where our mind convinces us of something that isn't entirely true, which then just pours gasoline on our emotional fire. Let's look at a few of the usual suspects. See if any of these ring a bell for you. You've got catastrophizing. That's when a tiny mistake feels like a world-ending disaster. Then there's self-blame, where you take the blame for things totally outside your control. Or what about personalization? Being 100% sure your friend canceled lunch because of you, and not the million other things it could be. Just noticing these is a huge first step.
So if those are the bad habits, how do we break them? This is where we get to the hero of our story today, the thought record. This is the practical, step-by-step tool that lets you take all this theory and put it into action.
This is the blueprint right here. You start by just writing down the situation and how you're feeling. Then you nail down that specific unhelpful thought. Okay, now here's where the magic really happens. You become a detective. You look for evidence for that thought. But then, and this is the key, you deliberately hunt for evidence against it. This process lets you create a more balanced, realistic alternative thought. And finally, you check in with yourself, how do I feel now? It's such a structured way to get some much-needed perspective.
Let's make this real with a social anxiety example. The initial thought is, I'm boring. That feels so permanent, right? It feels like a fact about who you are. But after going through the process, look at the alternative thought. It shifts from, I am boring, to, it's not that I am boring, it's a thing I do when I'm stressed. Can you feel the difference there? One is a fixed identity, the other is a changeable behavior. And that, right there, is incredibly empowering.
What this whole process really does is teach you how to become your own therapist. And any good therapist has a toolkit, right? A set of powerful questions to help guide you. So let's load up your toolkit.
Okay, this one right here might be one of the most powerful questions you can ever ask yourself. Are my feelings facts? Just because I feel like a failure, does that make it an objective, proven fact? This simple question helps you create a little space between what you're feeling and what is actually real.
And here are a few more gems for that toolkit. Asking, what would I advise my best friend? That instantly brings in compassion and objectivity. Asking, has thinking this way been helpful? Forces you to see if the thought is even useful. But my personal favorite is this last one. What is it more true to say? It's not about finding some fake, super positive thought. It's about finding one that's just more accurate and balanced.
You can really see the before and after here. The negative thought,
I always fail at everything I try uses that word always. It's an absolute. It's a dead end. But the balanced thought completely reframes it. Failure is part of learning. I can review and improve. See how that opens up possibilities? It turns a dead end into a path forward.
Here's another great example of self-criticism. The negative thought creates this all-or-nothing trap. It's either perfection or failure. The balanced thought just dismantles that idea entirely. It introduces nuance, recognizing that progress and effort matter. This is exactly how you build a more flexible, resilient mind.
Now, all of these tools, all these questions, they're fantastic, but they only work if you actually use them. And this brings us to our last and I think most critical point. Understanding all of this is great, but it's the doing, the practice, that creates real, lasting change in your brain.
And remember, this whole process isn't about judging your thoughts. It's not about being a good thinker or a bad thinker. This is just science. You're simply learning to notice when a mental dial was maybe set a little too high, and you're learning how to gently adjust it back to a more accurate setting.
And this quote from the source material really says it all. Taking action is what rewires your brain, not just reading about it and understanding the theory. The real change happens when you pick up the pen, when you do the thought record. It's that consistent action that builds the new pathways in your brain and makes this whole new way of thinking become second nature. Apply, apply, apply. Make it a habit.
Which leaves us with one final, powerful question. You are the author. You are the editor of your internal monologue. You have the tools. The science is solid. So, what story are you going to choose to write for yourself, starting today?